Welcome everyone to our May program on the history of the Laguna Beach Fire Department. As a means of introduction, I'm Dr. Greg DiNicola, the president of the Laguna Beach Historical Society. I want to thank you for giving up your evening to be with us tonight. I've done some checking. I checked the local restaurants, bars, and taverns, and we are the hot item in town tonight. So this is the place to be. As a means of reminder, most of you should have received your newsletter, either by email or U.S. mail, and hope you enjoyed it and look forward to seeing the next one. If you haven't been on our website lately, it changes frequently, so please go onto the web and look for our website. And if you're not following us on Facebook, we've had some very good posts. Johanna Ellis, who's rushing here right now from her house, is doing a great job on our Facebook page, and a lot of very fun pictures on there. Just when you least expect it, you'll see one. Scattered through the crowd are members of our board, so any questions or thoughts during or after, please seek the board out. Could I ask all the board members to stand for 2 seconds? So if you look around, these are people who you can chat with, give money to, anything like that. So thanks, board. If you're not currently a member of the Historical Society, I invite you to do so. Johanna Ellis, who's sitting in the back, is happy to give you some of the techniques of joining our group. If you're not, or if you already are a member or not want to be a member tonight, but you'd like to make a donation, because our bungalow can always use some improvements, and to offset the cost of these programs, there's a small basket in the back where you can make a donation. I did want to ask for some help from our membership and non-membership. I had the pleasure today to meet a young man named Martin Uchuk. Martin Uchuk is a videographer and a documentary maker, and he's in the process of doing yet another documentary on our greeter, Eilers Larson. He has found quite a few photos from our archives, but not a whole lot beside what the Historical Society has been able to give him. He's looking especially for video clips or any other type of pictures anybody may have of Eilers, and I have his information for anybody who wants to volunteer any data on him. We always try to support the people who document our history, and he certainly is doing that. It is my honor tonight to introduce our guest speaker. In October of 1993, a firestorm ripped through our town. To the townspeople, it was heart-stopping and frightening. To the fire department, the firefighters who fought in that firestorm, they have a name for that kind of thing. It's called a career fire. One of the firefighters was a young, enthusiastic young man of 24. He was just starting his career. And what an initiation into his career did he have with that career fire. Besides performing heroically during the firestorm, not eating or sleeping, he was instrumental in the post-firestorm operations. Being a young man in the early 90s, he quickly got the reputation of being the computer guru of the fire department, and he was instrumental in documenting a lot of the records and kept meticulous records so the city was able to get reimbursed from FEMA. As a Laguna Beach native, he joined the fire reserves in 1988, and in 1993, due to his heroics in the firestorm, Opie Weinert was named the Reserve Fireman of the Year. During his tenure in our fire department, he has also served as a fire prevention specialist, a firefighter, of course, an engineer. In 2000, he became a fire captain. He has also served as lead fire arson investigator and has and still teaches at the Santa Ana College for fire-based classes. And in 2013, he was rightfully promoted to division chief of our fire department. One of his first projects was to aid our firefighters get rid of a paper trail, as he called it, initiating the innovative program to use iPads. They would use iPads to record and submit patient data from the field and transmit the data to the hospital and the doctors at the hospital. Frequently, this allowed the data to be in the doctor's hands before the patient even got there. Opie encouraged the firefighters to take pictures from the scene with their iPads to share with the doctors who could see exactly what the accident scene looked like. Now, Opie sounds like he's all business, but he apparently does have a sense of humor, because when he was asked if the iPads were able to save Laguna Beach any money, he said, "Well, we aren't buying as many pens." Our guest tonight holds a bachelor's degree from Cal State Long Beach, 2 associate degrees from Santa Ana College. He is certified as a California Chief Fire Officer, and something I'm assuming he's most proud of, he's a proud graduate of Laguna Beach High School. Please join me in a warm Historical Society welcome for our guest tonight, Opie Weinert.
Turn it off. Haven't held one of these in a long time. So, I'm going to come up here. Thank you very much, the Historical Society, for this invitation. But I do have a couple of handouts as the Laguna Beach Fire Department comes up on our centennial. Came across our bicentennial booklets that we produced in 1969. So I've got a little perusing and light reading for you. If we had a couple, you kind of pass them around. And if at the end of the night you want to take it, maybe we'll reserve that for the board members. Some housekeeping items. I'm sure if you're not familiar, the restrooms are right back behind this door over here. I'm sure the Historical Society has met here on several occasions. Some items left off my resume. Very proud to have been born and raised here, to have gone to El Morro and Thurston and Laguna Beach High School, but also proud of my family and my 5 children. And of course in the audience, I recognize some faces. Why don't we just do it first? Josh Shields, go ahead and stand on up. Also a graduate of Laguna Beach High School. This is the individual who got me into the Laguna Beach Fire Department. If it wasn't for him, I'd be living in Silicon Valley, probably own my own internet company. And we have, of course, Eugene DeZabella, retired from Laguna Beach Fire Department. And while I'm an IT guru, I could not have gotten the computers to work without our Engine 2, Captain Kent, paramedic engineer Pacheco, and one of our newest firefighters, Adam Fugate. So they'll be assisting me tonight, apparently. Like I said, it is an honor to be here. I've been in this room, the council chambers, on several occasions to be pinned as I've promoted up through the fire department. I'm just a man, just a graduate from Laguna High School. The only reason why I have all these accoutrements and these funny things on my sleeves is because of the people I work with. The fire department here is incredible. The members, men and women, are committed to the city, to the citizens, to providing the highest quality of care. I couldn't ask for a better workforce to work with on a day-to-day basis. They actually support me in what I do. So very proud of what the fire department does. Our mission at the fire department, of course, is to fight fires and protect you from fires through fire prevention, through our operations. Our biggest portion of what we do at the fire department is medical, emergency medicine, paramedicine, and then also transport. Then we also do hazard mitigation, earthquake, flood, everything Laguna has seen, I'm sure, in your time here. So we'll kind of go through this PowerPoint quick. I know my time is limited. I was talking to Miss Ellis about questions and comments, my children. You know, if you have a question or a comment, I'm sure the audience here knows much about the fire department, much about the city. So I know nothing, so feel free to shout it out at any point. Would love to learn more. But we'll go through. First thing, we're a paramilitary organization, so I'm sure my fire chief would make sure that I mention all the chiefs. Here we have all the chiefs of the Laguna Beach Fire Department. So from Anthony Burkham from 1919 to 1924 to our current fire chief, Jeff Latendresse, who was promoted to fire chief in 2012. Some names you may recognize: Chris Head, Mike Macy, Ken McLeod, Jim Reed, Bill Edmondson, Rich Dewberry, and Ron Adams. I believe I have Ron Adams' white chief helmet here, so I have brought a couple of show and tell items. We'll go through those in a little bit. I tried in vain. I tried in vain to get a picture of Chief Berkman and could not. I know I have seen it. Unfortunately, I could not get it for this presentation tonight. But here are the pictures of the fire chiefs. Some tenures quite long, some tenures quite short. There was even politics back then. So Alan Phelps made it 1 year as the fire chief. Next slide. Now as we get into Seaman, Homer Mann, one of the longest running chiefs here, really credited with the Laguna Beach Fire Department with bringing us into a modern era. Although he left in 1970, his tenure here really heralded the opening of Fire Station number 2 on Agate Street, Fire Station number 3 at Top of the World. So more than doubled the size of the fire department in his last couple of years here. And then kind of in an era which I'm familiar with, Rich Dewberry, the chief who hired me, Bill Edmondson, Jim Reed, Ken McLeod, and then our most recent fire chiefs. Our current chief, of course, he gets 2 pictures. I'm sure he's at home watching, but he gets 2 shots, 1 action shot and then 1 more formal photo. But Jeff Latendresse is our current fire chief. He came to us from another fire department and was hired here as a captain, and is promoted up captain, battalion chief, division chief, deputy chief, and now fire chief. He lives in the city. And here is really what runs the fire department. If most people have jobs, you know who, although they don't have the title, the people that really run the organization. Well, here's the backbone of the fire department, starting with Athena Ward, our very first female hired with Laguna Beach Fire Department, all the way to our present administrative assistant, Anna Nira. Of course, there's a special place in my heart for Carrie Joyce, who is not here. She was at the pancake breakfast. Yeah, she was, but special place. She pinned several of my badges. You know, when you have that workforce, when you're a young man, born and raised in town, I didn't have a mother per se, so there's a strong maternal bond with Carrie Joyce. She really helped guide, I know Captain Kent as well, up through our careers. So they're not the chief, but they really run the show. Okay, a historical society. A building that many people are familiar with is our fire station number 1. And I've tried to put some side-by-side photos here for everyone to make a comparison. And some things, as you stare and look at the photo, you may see something right off the bat. And that is the doors where the fire engines drive out. Round, and then they went to square. Captain Isabella, you want to tell them why we did that?
The problem was when the engines got bigger and bigger, as you come out the door, I got in trouble one time coming out when I was an engineer. As you came out the door and it was very narrow, and even when the trucks are smaller, there was a thing, and if you didn't turn, or if you start turning too quick because of traffic, the ladders could hit on that thing. And as the engines got bigger, they wouldn't fit in through that arch anymore. And so they had to square it off. And in fact, as the engines got bigger, at one time there at the back of the station below where the tower is was the chief's office is now a storeroom, and the secretary where the ladies worked was right outside. And over the years, we had to shorten the tailboards on the fire trucks so that they wouldn't run into her office wall, and just leave a little bit of room to be able to walk behind it.
Probably won't be the last time I hand this microphone off to Diz. The doors have since changed. For those that may have noticed, we now have bifolding doors. They don't open up; they open to the side. And if anyone's seen our newest fire engine back into the fire station, it has about 2 to 3 inches of clearance from the ceiling. So we special order our fire trucks a little lower than most. So here we are, of course, in council chambers off to the left, and this is still Station 1. The dates, I kind of mixed them up a little bit, but just to show you, the photo to the right is generally pretty much the oldest photo that we have of Fire Station 1. You can see civil defense back in the 1940s and 50s, the California Civil Defense. They bought fire engines for communities, gave them for part of the civil defense. That has since migrated and morphed into the Office of Emergency Services. We today still have a fire engine from the state of California that when called upon, we have to send. And it can go anywhere from a 10-day assignment upwards of 30 days. When they call, it has sleeping bags, food, water, enough supplies so our crews can last 10 days. I believe we had over 45 days of crews outside our city in Northern California fighting fires last year. And you can see the hose carts on the older photo to the right. Our fire station number 2. I feel maybe I'm ready to sign up for the Historical Society because I say it's behind Tortilla Flats. I still say it's behind Tortilla Flats all the time when people ask me, what's Tortilla Flats? So it's behind Mozambique. Another tidbit is my sister used to work at Denny's in town. If anyone remember where Denny was, it was right there. So this is our fire station number 2. A little, like I said, it was opened in 1968. So here's a little older picture off to the left, and then a picture off to the right. And that picture off to the right is several years old. When those fire stations were built, they were built with wood siding. But we've since replaced that with more fire resistive, meeting our own codes that we have here in the city. Next photo. Fire Station 3. Just a little bit about the fire department here. We'll go through the next fire station. There's 4 fire stations in the city of Laguna Beach. At each station is 1 fire engine that is staffed 24 hours a day, every day of the year. Generally on that engine are 3 individuals, a captain, an engineer, and a firefighter. We have paramedics. All the paramedic services provided in Orange County is provided by fire departments. That's how it is here in Laguna Beach too. Although you see ambulances responding, they're generally the transport. We contract their services and they transport from the scene of the accident or injury to the hospital. But all the paramedic services, all the medications that are going to be given are given by Laguna Beach firefighters. But in this photo off to the left at fire station number 3, there's only 2 individuals. When that fire station opened, it was not constantly staffed. Occasionally there would be 1 individual at that station. So those 2 individuals looks like Tom King and Harvey Bolts. And then this is what the station looks like now. It's located at 2900 Alta Laguna Boulevard, very close to Top of the World School. It is staffed 24 hours a day. It has a Type 1 fire engine. Okay. Fire Station 4. There's a little note down at the bottom, wrote down there. This fire station number 4, it was originally a forestry fire station. And then when the forestry department was absorbed and turned into the Orange County Fire Authority, the Fire Authority took over that fire station, or Orange County Fire Department, and it became their fire station number 6. So they open their stations generally. Station number 1 is the first one they opened, Station 2, Station 3, Station 4. So you can see in South Laguna, it was their station number 6. And then with our annexation with the city of Laguna Beach, when we annexed South Laguna, we absorbed that fire station. We didn't build it. It looks a little bit like a shoebox. We know Laguna, we'd probably add a little bit more artistic flair to it. But we took it over. It's now our 4th fire station number 4. And that is a paramedic staffed. Station 1 here at City Hall and the fire station down in South Laguna are staffed by paramedics. Any questions before I move on past fire stations? Is my pace going okay? All right. Fires in Laguna Beach, fire in Laguna Beach, go ahead. really interesting to understand a community, an organization, the importance of the history, the fraternity, all the things I've read through in preparation for this presentation has been amazing. Reading articles back from 1932 in the local paper about the fire occurrences, it is amazing how much fire we have had here in the city of Laguna Beach. This is a house fire in 1945, and of course, as the historical society, I've really gotten into it. And I love these photos. I wanted to make them as big as I could make them to show you. And they're difficult to see, but this is a building right next to the movie theater. And we can see the movie theater here. I kind of took the current movie theater, and then right here. And of course, Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau in The Odd Couple, 1968. And does anyone know what's there now, where that building used to be, the Playhouse used to be? It's a gasoline station, correct, gas station. The building's not there. What has been interesting in doing this is finding out that sometimes when a building burns or a home burns, it's either redeveloped, how it changes a community, how these fires impact. Sometimes in a good way, bigger, newer, and sometimes in a bad way. When a fire happens, a business, a family never returns. Very interesting to kind of absorb that as I'm going through some of the history. Wildfires, brush fires, vegetation fires. Of course, we remember the fire. I was here in 1993. But going through the articles, how many wildfires this community has had. It was incredible. Whether it was Sycamore Flats, Emerald Bay, Aliso Wood, and finding out that not only in 1979, but earlier in the 40s and the 30s, we sent firefighters across Orange County to fight fires. Something I did not know, that in the 1930s and the 1940s, if Brea or San Diego had a large fire, we sent fire engines down there back then. It's common practice now, without question. We have agreements. Matter of fact, the agreements are built into computer systems. The computers make the decision. If Newport Beach has a fire, the computer decides who's closer, and we go without question, without approval. We will always help our neighbors. We have some caveats there. We will always ensure that our city is provided for as well. But this brush fire was Laguna Canyon Road in 1979. Diz, is that you on the tailboard? I've heard the rumors that is you on the tailboard. So tailboard runners, something we don't do now. I think Josh Shields had an opportunity to ride. I know I rode tailboard. Captain Kent rode tailboard in the organization. We don't do that now. A very efficient way of driving, but we don't see passenger cars doing it, so we don't do it either. This also is a convertible. If you see, it was a little tougher in the rain to drive around in that engine. Okay, sorry, next. Yes?
One of the biggest things with those, when the first engine we got that had windshield wipers on both sides of the windshield, we thought it was the greatest thing.
Although Laguna has some of the richest artistic history, the thespian society, the actors, the wonderful history, oftentimes you Google Laguna Beach and what's the very next thing that pops up? Of course, it's our fire in 1993. October 27th, 1993, I was here for the fire. Captain Kent, Isabella, Josh Shields, you were here for the fire as well. So we'll go through just a couple of pictures. Those are some of the resources and some of the statistics for it. Next slide. Of course, for those that remember, and I'm sure at the end of the presentation or now, if you want to jump out and shout something out at me for your experiences of the fire. A picture of kind of Irvine Cove. Upper Irvine Cove had just been built. Upper Irvine Cove, the homes up in that area. Of course, this is El Moro, where I lived for a period of time. And this is just as it's cresting over into Emerald Bay. I was actually with Lieutenant Scott Dietrich, a Laguna Beach lifeguard, who was also a reserve firefighter. It was just him and me in a pickup truck with a hose, and we hooked it right up to a fire hydrant at the very top of LaDroit Street, and we were on a roof of a house as the fire came over. Of course, for those that were around, remember, don't want to call it a war zone, but like a war zone. For members of the fire department, we recently did interviews year before last about the 1993 fire. And to see retired captains in this organization cry over the Laguna Beach fire is amazing. It's emotional for a lot of people, especially for those that were there. And it impacted us even today in our operations of what we do. But you'll see some pictures of some men that I've seen cry over the Laguna Beach fire. It really did affect us. It's something that our members are carrying for a lifetime. And it was a career fire for me at a young age, so I don't have much to look forward to, hopefully. And more pictures. These are from my personal stock of photos that someone gave to me. This is along Laguna Canyon Road. And just a real quick note, the yellow fire engine, generally, when you see those yellow fire engines, those are the fire engines that the state of California owns. And so it gives you an idea of resources that were coming in. I'm not sure where that engine came from, but of course we had engines from Ventura, Santa Barbara come in during the 1993 fire. Of course, Laguna Beach, our community, it's amazing how many disasters our community, it's incredible to think about. If you think about the city of Brea, how many disasters they've had, or the city of Newport Beach. Anyone remember one of the largest fires in Newport Beach? But when you say Laguna Beach, you think of all these things flooding in Laguna Beach. Next slide. Going through the history and the newspaper articles and the pictures of the flooding, fire and floods, it's an equal threat to us. It's something that the firefighters work with. I don't want to get Josh Shields to cry because I know he won't, but the flooding that we have responded to on Laguna Canyon Road for fatal floods, landslides have been incredible. And to look at the history, so from 1937, first recorded flood in the city's history, 5.9 inches of rain. The fire department, of course, we use computer modeling and the National Weather Service. We get alerts both for fire danger and for rain and flood danger. So for us, an inch of rain is a benchmark, 1 inch of rain. And how quickly that 1 inch falls. If that 1 inch falls in an hour time frame, that's kind of a red flag benchmark for us, that the ground cannot absorb the water that quickly. So you can imagine what 5.9 inches of rain did. And then, of course, in 1938, and then 41, 66, 69, 78. March 1st, 1983, and I think in the future slide there's a picture of it. Go ahead. And then on just 1998, 2010, 2007. After the Laguna fire, very shortly after the Laguna fire, it was only 14 days after the Laguna fire that we started to experience flooding. If you remember the remediation efforts with the crews and a lot of debate, they were painting the hillsides different colors, like green. Everyone wondered, why are they painting the hillsides? We were seeding the hillside. Immediately after the Laguna Beach fire, we started this process because we knew the rains were going to be an issue. And not 12 to 14 days later, we started having significant runoff and mudslides from it. Next slide. Here's a photo from 1983. I did my darndest to try and find the movie that was playing at South Coast Cinemas, a movie theater which I worked at, by the way. I also worked at the Haagen-Dazs right next door. And this is the 2010. And so here we are at Broadway and Coast Highway. Now it's generally filled with a sand pit, and you can see it, as we all experience, just turns into that roaring river out to sea. Next slide. Besides flooding, we have mudslides. I know we have a history in Bluebird Canyon. I only bring up the most recent one in 2005. But of course, Bluebird had another significant landslide event, 2005, what would be 30 years before this. So here's a picture of the Bluebird slide. some of the damage that occurred. And this was just a decade ago. El Nino. Of course, the fire department is exceptional, as I said, because of our members. We work with other departments in the city who have members that are outstanding, both the police department and the marine safety department. I think we have seen both our police officers and our lifeguards act heroically in ways that we could not perform. We cannot go out and surf this big. Thankfully, we have professional ocean lifeguards that do. We respond to a lot of emergencies where our police officers perform at a level which is outstanding. But thankfully, I think we stay dry. We'll stay dry in these photos and let the lifeguards do their work. Next slide. And I have a mix of, go ahead, next slide. I have a mix of kind of some photos here just to show you a little bit about what we do. So it's amazing. We really got into the emergency medicine nationally. Fire departments nationally really got into it in about the 1970s. And that started with the Department of Transportation, unbelievably. The Department of Transportation is the one who set the standard for medical care, emergency medicine. And you can see why they set that standard. While there were hospitals, the Department of Transportation set the level of EMS training, and in 1970 it really took off and spread all the fire departments, because fire departments were called to these scenes, and they had limited medical training. And in the 1970s is really what established that medical training as a national standard for firefighters, from EMT to paramedicine. And you can see some accidents in 1970 that we responded to. There's actually paramedics in the 1970s in this photo, the 1980s, and then kind of a blend between the two. Next one. This is a little bit more of a modern era accident. Some of the more specialized tools and equipment that we use to stabilize and extricate patients out of vehicles. And high-angle rescue operations, or rope rescue. Every engine in the city of Laguna Beach carries a full complement of rope rescue equipment. Not all fire departments do that. Generally in Orange County, you would only find that on a truck or a ladder truck, or someone's driving the very back of the engine, the tiller. But in Laguna, every engine carries a full complement of rope rescue equipment. Because of our cliffs, we do this a little bit more frequently than most fire departments. Some interesting things here. On the bottom right-hand side is Jeff Priest, recently retired engineer with our department. He's now traveling California, enjoying it. And in the upper right, if you're in uniform, you can't see where that is. But I think, let me find you, I think your son, actually, Kurt Bladergroen, is the one in the very top stretching down there. So I see his mom in the audience. That's actually at the Montage. When the Montage was being built, we did some training there to become familiar with the area. So we do a lot of technical rope rescue. And I didn't know when it started. I didn't know when we started doing rope rescues. And come to find out, here, Monday, June 8, 1970, Laguna, and I'll say the term firemen, that's not a term we generally use now, firefighter, haul injured Joseph Ramos Jr. up a cliff at Irvine Cove. That was for a boat carrying 4 individuals that ran aground at Abalone Cove, and 4 individuals washed up against the rocks. The interesting thing about this is, this wasn't in my bio, I also worked 24 years as an ocean lifeguard. And my boss for the lifeguards is wearing the white t-shirt right there, Jack Linke, who was a longtime lifeguard here in the city. So it's interesting, as I'm going through these articles, I find my old lifeguard boss back in 1970 doing a technical rope rescue. Okay. And this is another rescue operation. So it just shows the history of how long we've been doing it and how many of these occurrences we have here in the city. While we don't have our own helicopter, I don't want to disappoint you. Although we have been doing a lot of helicopter training the past month, many of you have probably seen helicopters flying over and over. We have agreements with the Orange County Fire Authority. The Fire Authority has 4 helicopters. We do training every year with helicopters, with different helicopter providers. This year it's with the Fire Authority. So our crews are familiar with using the helicopters, working with the helicopters, flying in the helicopters. This is probably recorded, so I want to get an accurate number. I believe that we have had 7 helicopter operations here in the city on emergencies so far this year. So generally in a year, we'll have about 20 where we will use a helicopter. That can be for an injured hiker in Laguna Coast, Aliso Wood, or on an isolated cove or beach. It could be for a wildfire. Or it could be for a critical car accident where we land a helicopter to get the patient quickly off the scene into a trauma center. So this is up at the Fire Road in Laguna Beach. These are our crews training with the helicopter. Next. I'll ask Chris to speak. Just shout out the number. How many helicopter landings do you have under your belt on a beach?
I can't even count.
Can't even count.
Yeah.
It's quite a common occurrence. Of course, these 2 beaches right here, this beach on the left is Table Rock Beach in South Laguna. And the beach on the right is Thousand Steps. It's the very south end of Thousand Steps. Of course, it's an old photo because that home is no longer there. The old pier house at Thousand Steps is no longer there. But as summertime comes up, this is something that we plan on doing. We work very closely with both the Orange County lifeguards and Laguna Beach lifeguards, who provide an incredible service of treating the patients before we arrive. And in these cases, to get a critically injured person off the beach, to walk them up the stairs if they have maybe a bad back injury or a medical condition, our choices for speed and timeliness to get them to a hospital quicker is probably to fly them off. So we do a lot of these operations over the summertime. They don't just land in the backcountry. We don't just use them for fighting fires. They land in the middle of the road, in the middle of the street. Whether it's for burn patients, whether it's for a car accident, a critical cardiac. Here's the patient, and the helicopter's been waiting for the patient, so they actually shut down while we extricate the patient or treat the patient, so the rotors stop spinning as we load the patient up. Now probably into the funner stuff for the historical. Hi, Gabe. Into the funner stuff, some of the fire department photos. So we'll go to the next slide. So the early days in Laguna Beach. So here in 1924, we had an all-volunteer fire department. We give Diz a hard time. Did you ask Diz where he was in this photo? We know he wasn't there. Well, we give Diz a hard time. Having a historian, an elder, to provide us some of the history has been invaluable. But this photo taken 1924, early picture, the photo is actually where the water district is. That's where the fire department ran out of. This is Ed Wynn. And it says volunteer firefighter Ed Wynn, to try and get the picture as big as I could. Maybe lost a little. And I'm not familiar with what engine that is. Captain Isabella? That is the Seagrave. That is the Seagrave that you probably see every year, right? Patriots Day Parade. Some of the interesting things about the Seagrave, a lot of people, the paint's not the shiniest, it gets a little dull, but that is the original paint. Sometimes you see fire engines where they're immaculate, where they've repainted and refurbished them. Well, we've kept our engine as original as possible. As you see it there, you probably see it at the Patriots Day Parade. It almost looks near identical. The paint is exactly the same. So this is the, thank you, Adam. This is the groundbreaking ceremony for Fire Station 1. I believe in some of the items I have to hand out, we have the original architectural plans and the bond for the building of Fire Station. It was raised through funds donated by local residents and business owners to build Fire Station number 1 right next door. And this is the groundbreaking for it. 1937. See, they weren't quite paramedics, but even then we had EMS training, some first aid training, some very basic splinting. And he's looks like he's got Epsom salts. He's going to wake him up with Epsom salts. We don't carry those anymore. Okay, next one. As I hopefully imparted on the whole reason why I'm here is because of the people I work with. So to look at these photos and see the men and women that have served this community is emotional to me. It is incredible to think about. Of course, in 1939, everybody there is not being paid. You can see Ed Wynn, I think, up there. He's wearing his hat up here, right? Right up here. Dave Balfour's up there, a couple other characters. Business owners, residents, community members. And there's a photo in here where it shows the siren. It's on the hose tower at Fire Station 1. And when someone called the emergency number, they'd activate the siren, and the siren would go off, and they'd shut down the shop and the business, and they'd respond in and hop on the fire engines, an all volunteer fire department. So 1944. So here are some of the volunteer fire eaters. Not my term, it's what's been put in there. So it shows you, we had a Packard ambulance, so we provided transport back then, and our engines. Of course, the Seagrave is still there in the upper right. We put ladders on top of it, modified it a little bit, but we couldn't make it too high because it's just barely getting underneath the arch even back then. Chief Homer Mann, as I said, really the starting point of a modern fire department for Laguna Beach. And this is at Fire Station number 1. So he's with D. Woodward, who would become a fire chief, and A.J. Grant. The police department, if you remember, was on this side. This is how you'd come into the police department before the City Hall remodel in the 90s. Right? You'd walk into the police department over here. So there's the police department sign on the other side of council chambers. It's incredible to think about. This is from a magazine, the National Hotel Magazine in 1956. While some businesses and residents may not fully grasp and appreciate fire prevention, in 1956 is when the sprinkler system went in at the Hotel Laguna. And so here's a photo that was published in a magazine of them checking and inspecting the system. Those risers still exist. They're in the garden area of the Hotel Laguna. So next time you're at the Hotel Laguna, you walk through, you'll see those risers. This is an interesting article. This is Alex Sanchez, I believe Alex Sanchez, yeah, a Peruvian who was walking across the world. He wanted to walk around the world, stopped in here in Laguna Beach. So he began his journey on April 15th, 1958. He made it here to Laguna on November 17th, 1960. He was a 25-year-old Peruvian traveler. He was a volunteer firefighter back in his community. So I tried to research and find out as much as I could. I found out that he made a stop in Yuma, Arizona in 1962, and I found an article about him being in Brooklyn, New York. But I lost track of him there in the history. I couldn't find out anything more. If I could have made a phone call for the Historical Society and we could have talked to him, I would have. But I lost track of him. But I did get him in Brooklyn and in Yuma, Arizona. But interesting, he made a stop here. This would be our class of '68. I put their names up there. I'll read them off in case you can't see them. So we have Bill, Ron Rowe, a name, Mike Aiken, Dean Elliott, Scotty Lucas, Joe McClure, who ended up being a battalion chief, Bob Passage, Harvey Bolts, Gary Feller, Tom Springstead, Franchett Davis, Jim McCrary, Jim Dempsey, Rick Grams, Chuck Royce, and Ken Height. Not all these members continued here with Laguna Beach Fire Department for their careers. Some of them went on to other fire departments and organizations. Some of them chose after a while not to become firefighters, either voluntarily or not. But it is amazing to see those are the young men, the class of 1968, when we opened up Fire Station number 2 and Fire Station number 3. We had to hire a big influx of firefighters, and that's the big group that we hired. And a lot of those names, Captain Kent, Captain Isabella, Josh, we worked for or worked with. So, next photo. I apologize. This is because of time. I did not have time to actually get everyone's name up there, but this is the entire fire department. This is a group photo, and there's a couple newer ones. This is outside fire station number 1, but some of the names and some of the members here. You can still see we had an affinity with convertible fire engines. Maybe it's because of the beautiful weather we have in Laguna. We still are driving convertible fire engines, but if you can see on the hose tower on the upper right is looks like the World War II civil defense siren, the grinder. So that tower in the upper right is a hose tower. We have them at stations 2 and station 3. They're big metal structures now, but that was used to hang hose. So after the firefighters would go fight fire, the hose gets wet. And you can't just put it back all away because it's going to get all mildew and rot out. So we have to dry the hose out. Now we have different synthetic hose. We don't need to do it as much. But the firefighters would wash and clean and hang the hose. And so that's the hose tower. So when you see those at fire stations, that's what those are used for. Ours was enclosed. We had style back when the station was built. It still looks the same. So here's Joe McClure looking back with his hands on the wheel. Hopefully the engine's not moving. So it says Jim Boca, but that is actually Bing Boca. As I can tell, I can see that's Bing right there in the middle, and Chuck Royce. And so this was advertising for the engine that we had bought. I think the engine maker wanted to use it for advertising. But that was their emergency lighting was just that one big red light up in the middle there. Just talking about our coastline, I think we already showed this photo. And just some of the history in our own organization. Of course, in the 1970s, Chief Charlie Kuhn, matter of fact, his bench is right out here. Chief Charlie Kuhn, I had the fortune of working with before he passed away. But there he is in the 1970s. And this is a sassy firefighter. I guess firefighters all have it in them, right? I mean, we can't just stand normally. We always have to give some kind of a pose like that, I think. So that doesn't look natural to me, but okay, next. I love this story. If you ever come up, the upstairs of City Hall is where our fire administration is located. We have a bunch of photos up there. This photo is one of them. So this is Jim Boca. And if you can't read it, I'll read it off to you, with a young child doing a public education event. We do these quite often for the schools. And this young child is Matt August, who came to work here for the police department. So the hose just didn't quite work for him. That little plastic hat we gave him didn't quite turn him over to the fire. So he ended up being a police officer here with the city of Laguna Beach. Now he's a sergeant for the city of Irvine. But every time I see him, I razz him about this day. He just didn't pass the test to become a firefighter. So 1970s and 1980s, Bill Coulter and Jim Dempsey. In the Seagrave, of course, we put the ladders on top. And then at Station 3, Tom King and Harvey Bolts in the 1980s. 1980s again. Jim Dempsey, Ken Tu, Jerry Johnson, and this good-looking guy right here. This is probably why every girl likes a firefighter, is because of Captain Isabella right there. Good looking back then, good looking today. And Rich Dewberry and Carl Klass, of course, who lives here in town, born and raised in the city. All right? If those of you remember Klass Hardware, is that right? 1990s, we unfortunately gave up the convertibles. We had to put a top on, and some of the equipment, we started carrying more equipment. The engines started getting bigger. They got taller, they got wider. We had to modify the fire stations that we built in 68 and 1930. And the engines got bigger. We started carrying more rope rescue equipment. There's Dean Elliott, Chuck Royce, and Knox Tiernan. And then this is a photo from 2009, and here's, yes?
The reason they put their roof is after the Watts riot, when they were throwing fire bombs down on the fire trucks. That's when they put the roofs on all the engines.
So as the story goes, of course, I responded many a day sitting backwards on this fire engine. I also went to the LA riots, and I was sitting, just the roof did provide protection. I'm not going to lie, that was a help, but I really wanted a door badly when I was at the LA riots. So now you see the engines, they don't do that. They're fully enclosed, a full cab. Not just for that, but for all sorts of reasons. But that's why the roofs went up, was after the Watts riots. So 2009, this is generally the size and strength of the fire department. We still have reserves, volunteers. It's a little different than when Josh Shields and Chris Kent, we were reserves. But this is a general representation of what your fire department looks like now. About half of the members being paramedics to provide advanced life support. Next photo. And this is of course is our newest fire engine, a 2012 Pierce Velocity. And you might be able to see how it can just barely get, if you look at the picture, how it just barely fits into the fire station. And I wanted to thank Jeff Sicaro, a Laguna Beach lifeguard. Of course, I have a busy schedule. He assisted me in putting together this PowerPoint presentation, but our reserves, current reserves, we have 15, and as they try and progress and become professional firefighters, they do their reserve and volunteer work. And so I threw his picture up to thank him for helping me. And that's it. I did have a couple of show and tell items, which interesting. And like I said, you know, when we break and we'll take questions, you can come up here and take a look. This is a flag from the Port Authority, so after 9/11. There's another helmet over there. These are some of the original fire helmets that the firefighters would wear. As I said, this is Ron Adams' Fire Chief's helmet. And I brought some books up here which go back a little ways, but they kind of have some of the, you have Burning in America over there? There he is. So some different books here to show the history of the fire service in the nation. So if you want to come up here and peruse and look through them. I have some different photos. Let's see. Here's an article from 1931. The new fire hall, pride of Laguna. All materials of best. Contractors share in giving to make station ideal. Every man on the job of building the new fire hall did their very best he could for the town and for the volunteer firemen, said John Brickles, honorary member of the Firemen's Association and former commissioner of the Fire and Police. There was no skinning on materials, no taking advantage of anyone. It was really a public building put up by public for the public. So it's interesting to read some of these articles here, but that is the article from when Fire Station number one opened. I have some books. These are our daily logs. Now, of course, unfortunately, they're kept by computer. But back in the day, the captains would document everything that the crews did. So I have a book here from 1953, and it's the station journal. This is from Fire Station number 1. So, someone's birthday, give me a month and a day. Anyone want to shout out to? July 27th. So July 27th, 1953. Let's see what the crew at Fire Station number 1 did. (0700) on duty. Homer Mann, chief. Charlie Kuhn, he was the engineer. There's only 2 of them that day at Fire Station number 1. So, general cleaning of the station and equipment. They conferred their reports. Let's see. Called. I can't say I can read Homer Mann's writing. Called to the burn dump overnight. So maybe there was something at the dump that was on fire, burning overnight. And official detail. I don't really see. It's hard. You'll have to read when you come up here and read. Maybe you can read it better than me. I can read the book in the entry from 1993, though. So this is the book from 1993. Anyone want to call out a date?
October 27th.
There you go. Before I even get to October 27th, the ink in red denotes an emergency call. So, so you can see on duty and on Saturday, the 21st of August, 1993, at 0727, structure fire, 976 South Coast Highway. Then a medical emergency, medical emergency, medical emergency all day long. But October 27th, they had to add a piece of paper in here. That was of course, that was an unusual day where they couldn't document it all down in one day. So when you turn to that date, it's not what you would think. We didn't list 400 houses burning that day. But there are some interesting things in this book to read about what the crews did the day before, that day, who was working, and what they did for the weeks and weeks following. Like I said, it was a very trying time for our own firefighters here. So I brought a book from 1953, 1993. This one's a little harder. 1969, 63, and some different books if you want to look through and kind of read. Some other things, of course, the fire service has really changed real quick. Some of the equipment we have has changed. It's changed for the good and the bad. The equipment we have is unbelievable. If we didn't send people up to space, we wouldn't have some of the technology we have in the fire department. But we can go in farther and last longer than our predecessors. Whereas before, they didn't have masks and helmets and hoods and all this equipment. When their ears got hot, they figured it's pretty much time to get out of the house. Now we go in so far, so deep, the firefighter fatalities, it's still one of the most dangerous occupations in the nation because we push and challenge ourselves with some of the new equipment. Some of the very first breathing masks we had was this MSA. We can open it up and show you the gas mask, the kind of breathing mask. Now the technology we have, Captain Kent's in charge of all our breathing masks, it's almost from another planet. When we get dressed up in our suit, when we do our preschool tours, the children don't recognize us. So I have some of this material, but I'll take some questions if you want to throw, or some comments, because I know there's a lot of historians here in the city.
Hold on, the mic, we're on film.
I have a question. The first fire you showed us next to the theater, I'm curious what building was there. We have unattractive gas stations now on both corners. What originally was there?
The building that was there was actually used as a playhouse.
Oh, fun.
It was actually used as a playhouse. There are a lot of photos that I did not put in here. There was a fire next to the Masonic Lodge, Club M on Coast Highway, 600 block of Coast Highway. The newspaper article said, "The hippie's house burns," finally. But that particular one was used as a playhouse.
Probably at the time of the fire, it was converted into a restaurant.
It was at that wasn't Jerry's restaurant.
I don't remember the name. I remember taking hoses back there.
Another question?
There was a fire at the Coast Inn on Mountain Road about 1957, or at least that's when they restored it. Did you happen to see anything?
I did.
Great.
And I already have it digitized, so I don't need to scan it. I already have it digitized. And so afterwards, we can get together. If you want, if you're like, my uncle's house burned in I probably have it. So, and if not, we can pull it up in the book and you can read the log about it. So I think I already have some of the information on that fire digitized. It was interesting, I came across a fire of a classmate, Kobe Ness, who we went to school with. I never knew that when he was an infant, his house burned down to the ground. And as I read the article, back in 1970, his house burned to the ground. So it is really amazing to go through some of this fire history. So we can get together. Okay.
Other questions?
It's kind of specific. I wasn't going to do this, but since there are not a lot of questions, I'll ask you. My sister moved into her house in May of 1993 on Manzanita, And her birthday was October 28th, 1993. So on her day before her birthday, we thought her house burned down at the corner of Manzanita. You know, it makes a turn there right above the tennis courts. And her house was a very small one-story cottage that was saved, and everything else on her street burned. So she was all alone there. Both sides burned, and the fire department told her afterwards that they stood on her roof and tried to get the fire to stop from getting to the high school by stopping it at her house. And I'm just a small question, I don't know if you know about this, but she was told that they used the water from the pool there to save her house. And that was just a rumor, and we want to know, do you know, did they use that pool water on any of those houses around there? Is that
I
a
don't
memory you
know
might
if they
have?
did, but I can tell you I was just right up the street for a while. In the 93 fire, I was, like I said, with Scott Dietrich in a pickup truck. And we were pretty much out of fire engines. I stopped here at Station 1, we threw hose, and we went and we got on our loudspeakers and we drove all the way above High and Hillcrest asking people to evacuate. And we kept driving all the way until we didn't drive in through Emerald Bay, the very top, Sunset, Panorama, LaDroit up there. And we pretty much knew at any moment the fire was going to hit us. So we hooked up a hose, we stood on roofs, Scott Dietrich and myself, and we didn't have a fire engine there. And we saved about three houses in that area. Later on, a fire engine came up. Then in Laguna Beach, when we heard that the fire had actually jumped the canyon and the Laguna Beach proper was burning, the Laguna Beach fire engines left where we were at, stationed in Emerald Bay, the ones that were there, and we came into the city. I was on an engine that came into the city, and we were driving up Park Avenue. I actually was sitting on another firefighter's lap. We didn't have enough seats. We left our pickup truck, and so I hopped on board a fire engine, and we drove up. And when we turned on Manzanita Street, it was nighttime. Although it was not nighttime, it was pitch black. And as a young man, although I experienced Emerald Bay, going into this was pretty incredible. And as we drove up, we kind of drove up the Bluemont, Virginia Park, that area. We kind of made our way up to Mystic Hills area. But that whole area was pretty intense for those that were in there. Where were you, Josh? Where were you that day?
Well, you did stop it from coming down into the high school, so.
Correct.
We were called back to man what they call the CD. Well, I wasn't on duty that day. We were called back to man what they called the CD. It's their OESs now. Chris was one of my crew, was with me. First, we protected houses along Emerald Bay, along the highway. Then we went down, descended down into El Moro Trailer Park to protect some trailers. And then they gave us 10 fire trucks from Northern California and told us, don't let it burn Corona Del Mar. So we ended up going up Newport Coast Road, and like we just were talking, he and I, we set more fires that day than we put out making backfires. We ended up that night in Turtle Rock, and I think we slept in a church. Yeah. And the next morning they come out and relieve those 10 fire trucks and put us with fire engines from the Marine bases. And we spent the day out in the field putting out spot fires among the cows and bulls. And you never know, you're always worried the bull's going to turn around and come after you. But we did get back to Laguna till midnight the next day. And I was very upset with my wife because I lived just below Monterey, and she never left. And when I asked her why, she said, well, they only told the people above Monterey to leave. She said, well, I had the dogs and stuff ready to go. And her and my neighbor was watering the roof and stuff, but the fire burned all the way across the hill, about a block above our house. But it was scary.
Do you have a question?
Well, I was just interested in how much the hospital, when it was built in 1960, how much that has helped your rescue, and because you'd have to go pretty far to get to a real hospital.
Yeah, there's a lot of sentinel events, of course, in the history of the fire department, and I think met the Sunset Inn, the Hotel Laguna burning down, 60 days after it opened up, and really established the fire department and the push. And some of the push for South Coast and Mission Hospital now, that has really changed some of the services that we provide, and it's aided us in what we can and can't do in the timeliness of things. Maybe a little bit about when you call 911. When you call 911 here, the city of Laguna Beach is one of the very few cities that has a full PSAP, public safety answering point. Not every city has that. When you call 911 from your cell phone or from a landline, in Laguna Beach proper, it's routed right next door. It goes to a fully established 911 center. The person who answers that 911 call is probably also going to be talking to the police officer, the lifeguard, the firefighter that responds to your house, if it is for a medical emergency. The Laguna Fire Department, currently we send the 2 closest units, fire units. So if it's here at City Hall, we're going to send our Engine 1, which is staffed with paramedics, 3 people, 2 being paramedics. And we're also going to send our Engine 2. Everyone asks why you get 2 fire engines on a medical emergency. We would rather oversend and send the appropriate amount of people, because for a critical medical emergency, a full arrest or CPR, everybody has a job to do. It is a very labor-intensive effort. You're trying to work as quickly and as accurately as you can to save someone's life. And so we send 6 people. Then the ambulance is sent. Once we load a patient up into the ambulance, there are hospitals which provide different levels of care. Hogue is a neurological hospital. Mission Hospital, Mission Viejo is a trauma center. But our hospital here in Laguna Beach has a fully functional, fully capable emergency room. And so a majority of our patients go there. What that does for this community is, as we transport, our paramedics go in the ambulance with the patient for continuity of care and go to the hospital. It provides a quicker turnaround. But it does happen where our paramedics go, either via helicopter or ambulance, to Western Medical Center in Santa Ana, to Hogue in Newport, to Hogue in Irvine, to Kaiser, to UCI, to Mission Hospital, Mission Viejo. And that turnaround time is a little bit longer than. We only have 2 paramedic units in the city of Laguna, and so having a hospital in our community is very beneficial.
Can I just ask a quick question? I don't need that. Several times I've seen, don't be funny now. Several times I've seen, I'm not going to say anything, I'm going to say, several times I've seen Emerald Bay here going up the hill or around. What is our relationship with them, the Emerald Bay volunteer, with the fire department?
Well, okay.
They just hang
What is our relationship with the Emerald Bay volunteers? Yeah, that's Orange County Fire Authority Fire Station number 11. If you remember, our Station 4 in South Laguna used to be their Station 6. So their 11th station was in Emerald Bay. They have a very rich history of fire service. Their firefighters there are all reserve or volunteers. They live or work immediately adjacent to Emerald Bay. They just took off their siren. They used to have a siren that went off. They just got rid of it. So now they're all attached to these electronic leashes. These things are called, even though this is a historical society, some people may not know this is a pager. So when someone in Emerald Bay, the phone systems automatically route that phone call to generally Orange County Sheriff. It gets call transferred to the Orange County Fire Authority. They enter it into the computer, and the computer makes a decision. If it's a medical emergency, it'll send their volunteer firefighters, who are exceptional, rich history. So Jim Waddell pretty much runs the show in there. But we will also send a paramedic unit to that community. So our Engine 1 provides the paramedic services to them. If it's a fire, like I said, they're a volunteer organization, 1 fire engine. So we quite often will send 1, 2, 3 fire engines and a chief officer into their community. So we spend a lot of time in Emerald Bay. If there is a call the fire authority has that's outside Laguna Beach proper, sometimes you will see them drive through our community to go out to Aliso Woods, out by the Ziggurat, or out Laguna Coast Wilderness Park. So we quite often go into their community to assist them, and they generally drive through our community. They also come into our community to assist us with calls as well.
Is there a reason why we have a bagpiper, and where did he come from?
Bagpiper, we do have a bagpiper. He's right back there.
Where did he come from?
Dave Lopez. So, do we have a bagpiper? Let me see if I can get the story of a bagpiper correctly. After 9/11, I had the amazing opportunity to go back a year later to the memorial back in New York. I went back with a couple members from this organization, and I don't think I knew what a bagpipe was until I was standing in full dress uniform looking down Broadway in New York with as far as the eye could see of people in uniform, and this horrendous sound, noise getting louder and louder, and drum beats, and I couldn't tell what it was, but there must have been thousands of bagpipers all moving down the street in uniform. That was my first experience of fire department bagpipers, and it was amazing. Well, Laguna Beach, we're a small fire department. One of our members took it upon himself. Everyone has kind of a nick or a hobby to start playing. Who picks up the bagpipe and says, I want to play that? I can't even do a kazoo. And Dave found a passion in starting the bagpipe. It has a rich history in the fire service. A lot of people associate. Have you run over? But I will tell you, while the audience, you love it, if you work with Dave sometimes, it's like your child with a drum set. Thankfully, he's quite good at the bagpipe. So now he's part of the Laguna Beach Police and Fire Honor Guard. Dave spends his own time, his own money, and countless hours traveling not only across the state of California for fallen firefighters and police officers, but across the nation, and has done so on his own time and volunteered countless days, bought his own plane ticket to represent the city of Laguna Beach, and he does so quite well. He's quite good at what he does. So.
Can I just say thank you to the fire department, because you do so much community service. You guys are totally amazing, the things you do for kids and the town and fundraising for other organizations, and even Memorial Day. I saw you at 3 different events, and you did an amazing job. You're wonderful, amazing people, and they make fabulous pancakes. Yeah.
Yes, they did.
Thank you so much for all that you do. Not to mention the best-looking fire department in this entire world.
Might be good looking, but dumb as a box of rocks.
Do you think and I think I've heard this before, but the fire department and police department of New York, there were so many Irish people in it. It was just a real tradition, and they did have the bagpipe not only in Scotland but also in Ireland, and maybe they kind of.
And I'm not sure what it is. If the Irish started the bagpipers, the Italians in the fire service started the good cooking, and the Germans, we kept everything clean. what all the different little groups were, but clearly back in New York and Boston and Philadelphia, the Irish, the fire service has a little longer history back there. So that's probably the establishment of the bagpipers.
And thank you, Historical Society. This was wonderful. And I
Thank
didn't
you.
know about it. Carrie Joyce told us yesterday, and I guess her husband wasn't feeling too good or she'd be here, but nobody I know, we didn't know about it.
Spread the word.
So,
Not that we didn't want to get you here.
it's all your fault.
Any other questions for Opie? I'm sorry.
People will be able to buy the disc, right?
Yes, there'll be a disc made. We've been on TV tonight, and discs are made and available. And if you contact any of the board members, but I will refer you to Johanna in the back, we can get you a copy of that.
It'll be on YouTube, too.
It's on YouTube as well. True. Any last questions for Opie? Hearing none, let's give a big round of applause for a great program. I'm sure we can twist his arm and his colleagues' arms to hang for a few minutes if you want to talk privately, look at some of the books and some of the things up here. And thank you for coming. Our next program is the last Tuesday of July. Night.